much easier population, which is working with teenagers. So there you go. So it'd be great to be back here in Newark. I had a blast last year. My buddy Mike Patang and I were often asked, you know, when we go around, what are some of the places that are doing cutting edge, just great youth ministry? What are the dioceses that are pushing edge of the envelope, that are getting it done? And Newark is always right off the top of our lips, and it's just an honor to be here. The diocese and what you do, and I've been to a couple of your parishes, so I'm grateful. My friend Alexis Fuentes has brought me in, and I think in September I'll be back again. So just grateful to be here. It's an honor to be in a place that it's so professional, and you take what you do so seriously. And the fact that you're here tonight, when that prayer just read out all kinds of other stuff, email, that we could be doing and maybe need to be doing, but you're prioritizing this, and that just says a lot. So thanks for being here tonight. My name is Pedophiles. Unfortunately, most people say pedophile, which is a little awkward when you work with teens for a living. But it does mean grandson en français, which I am. I'm double français. I'm Cajun from Nova Scotia and from France. So, or one who eats the whole cake. This is really just my testament. And I get to look at a time when I wasn't as follicularly challenged. So that's a good pick for me. Much more recent, obviously this was taken in the swamp in South Louisiana. We got to burn some of our frequent flyer miles and go up to Canada. Did dog sledding. That was awesome. My wife, Mindy, who tells me she's always right. I'm obviously, according to her, always wrong. My oldest, Max, who's no longer perfect because he turns 13 next week, and that's over. He ain't perfect anymore. He's an eye-rolling teenager, but fun. And my youngest, Benjamin, who's still purgatory and special. A better picture of us, perhaps. But you know, both of those pictures get a lot of likes on Facebook, right? They're cute family photos. But like most of you, the pictures that don't go up on Facebook are the pictures of my wife and I arguing this past weekend over me being gone again, me getting home from the end of the day because I've given all my energy trying to save everyone else's kids and having little to no patience left for my own kids. The tears in my boy's eyes, Dad, why are you leaving again to go speak to another high school or speak to another group of kids? We miss you, we want you home, right? You know, I'm imperfect just like you are. Tonight I'm here to speak from my experience and from my training and my education, working with young people who identify in the LGBTQ plus spectrum. And spectrum is really a weak word to describe it, but I, like you, am made of clay feet. I'm a broken man, like you, amen? And like you, I'm incredibly gifted and blessed. And we're all reminded what Carl Jung once said, right? He who casts a bright light, and Carl Jung wasn't in the PC, so he said he or she. Who casts a bright light casts an equally dark shadow. And so I believe that I'm grateful for the fact that I cast a bright light, but I know that I cast an equally dark shadow. That knowledge right there, for those of you who were here continuing the journey when I did the opening keynote a couple of years ago, remember, that knowledge that we are incredibly gifted and blessed, and also incredibly broken. Broken in ways that we're willing to admit in public, broken in ways that we even shy away from admitting in the confessional. That creates a compassion and an empathy within us. That is our secret tool to ministering to those who are marginalized. And the young people for whom we will talk about, of whom we will speak tonight, are incredibly marginalized at large. Whether they are in your parish or not, I don't know because I haven't been, but I know at large they are. You know, in the olden days, the really olden days, right, when, you know, the cartographers were, you know, putting together maps, well, you know, they could only map what they knew. And the area, when it got to the edge of what they didn't know, where they hadn't been and no one had explored, they wrote, here be dragons, right? That's what they just thought. That don't go there because there's dragons. And for a long time in ministry, we have heeded that warning of an outdated map. There be dragons, don't go there. And unfortunately, in many places in our country today, we're still heeding that warning. And once again, I have to thank the Archdiocese, the Cardinal, Tom and Rich and everybody who has brought me in. The fact that we're doing a night on this topic, I mean, I just couldn't say no. I mean, he could have probably got me for a few $100s less if he didn't. But a man just couldn't say no. Hey, would you come up and speak on this topic? Yeah, I'm going to go and speak on the topic. It's a gift. Most people are too afraid to speak on this topic. Most people are too afraid to even hold a night because of a bunch of reasons, and we'll get into that. But this is a good group. You know, unlike over there across the river in this archdiocese, we're not going to fight about it, right? I'm just kidding. I love it. I love it. I love the Pirates of the Caribbean movie when Jack Sparrow, he asks Captain Barbossa, he says, you know, we're lost. You know, we're lost, Captain. And Barbossa looks back at me and goes, certainly lost, but you've got to be good and lost to find a place that ain't been found. And isn't that true? A lot of times we feel lost, and I hear folks who are really showing a lot of initiative and working with young people who are on the margins, especially those who identify as LGBTQ+. We'll talk about what the plus and all that means in a second. But who identify in that spectrum, we feel like we're lost. And sometimes we may genuinely be lost, and I would heed Captain Barbossa that, you know, in order to find a place that hasn't been found, we're looking for answers that haven't been created yet, right? And those of us in the trenches, so let me speak broadly, and that's okay because I don't work for the church, so I can be that way. You know, for those of us in the trenches, we're looking for answers because we've looked up for them to be able to give us the answers. How do we pastorally handle these situations? Those of you who are in schools, I know the Canadian bishops have come out and been very clear on how to handle some of these issues and been very clear with some of their directives, but we lack some of that direction. Now that's a blessing and a curse, amen? It's a blessing and a curse. It's a blessing because it gives us the freedom and the ability to minister in situations where there's a lot of gray area, but there's a curse because sometimes we might feel a little less supported, and we could use some direction from the church in these areas when none of us in here, well, maybe a few of us in here are real serious theologians. None of us in here are bioethicists, at least that I can check, right? And probably no one, unless Tad Bahojic is in this audience, has got both of them under the same hat, right? And so we're looking for answers. We're trying to answer questions that haven't been answered yet. Father Henry Nouwen, the great Dutch priest, wrote, he said, and I don't think it was the Return of the Prodigal Son. Yeah, I think in the Return of the Prodigal Son, he said, you know, missionaries in the 21st century, unlike those in maybe the 19th and 18th and 17th century, will not have to be familiar with the geographic terrain. We've got that covered, right? Because, however, we will have to be intimately familiar with the terrain of the heart. And that is what we're going to be talking about tonight. And that's the area we play in ministry, right? We labor in, we play in. Amen? We're on the same, yeah. It's in the missionaries of the heart. It's the heart. You know, the scriptures talk about the mind occasionally, but heart. Just do a quick search about how many times the word heart comes up versus mind in the Bible, and you'll see, you know, what we know about the heart. And this is an issue for many, not all, but for many young people, is an issue of the heart. Is an issue of the heart. And if we're willing to go into that messy place of the heart, we will feel good about what we do. We will feel integrity in the way that we do it. And they will experience God's grace as we do it with them. Amen? Let's move on. So you might feel as though you're kind of drinking water out of a fire hydrant here. But for those of you who are like me, who are perfectionists, who Rich could come up here all day long and say, don't take notes, and you've already got like 2 legal-sized pages covered with ink right now. And you're like, I'm not getting out of here without getting it all, big boy. You can send me the PowerPoint all you want. But you know, if you get one or two things, thank you for that. I'm going to bring you with me. If you get one or two things tonight that can improve your ministry and make you more effective, make you feel a greater sense of the big psychology word, right? Is self-efficacy. Make you feel confident that, you know, self-efficacy is that when we know we're good at something, we feel better about going into it because we kind of know we're good at it. You know, when you didn't know how to ride a bike, you were scared to sell, right? Unless you were the strong-willed child, you really didn't care. You were like, I'll take a plane. But, you know, once you learned how to ride it, you were you had a high degree of self-efficacy. Tonight, I'm hoping to at least bump you 10 to 20% in that. So, oh boy, seriously, are you going to like put us to tears with philosophy, dude? We are youth ministers. Well, I'm going to move very quickly through it because I do think it's important. I've given this presentation probably 73 times already. I've done it in a day-long workshop. I've done it in dioceses near here. I'm not going to mention any names, Bridgeport, but I've given the presentation. And what I've learned is when we can set the philosophical and the theological construct for the conversation, it just helps us when we get into the pastoral care, right? Because otherwise we're just a balloon floating off, and we're going to float tonight up there, but we'll be tethered to something that's grounded and something that's rooted not only in our faith, but our faith is based on good reason. So what is philosophy? So metaphysics. Metaphysics asks the question, what is real? So if you and I can't agree that I'm standing here right now, then I should give you my business card and we can like have a virtual session later. You know, so what is real, that this is happening, we need to have that in order to get a good grounding. Anthropology is who are we, right? So Christian and theological anthropology, again, we're moving real quickly, who are we? And then finally, ethics. So philosophy is going to, it's a big word, but we deal with this all the time when you put the questions there, right? What is real? Is this real or not? What are we? What are we? Are we cars or are we human beings? And then what does that mean? And finally, based on what is real and who we are and what we are, what is right for us to do? What ought we do and what ought we not do? So anthropology, what does it mean to be a human being? You know, in the Oracle at Delphi, it's always to know thyself, right? To know oneself. Thomas Merton said his definition of holiness was to know and to be your perfect self. That is what it truly means to be holy. So what's a Christian anthropology, much less what is a theological anthropology? I love this book. We keep on slipping out of our own grasp as human beings, and we become more of a puzzle to ourselves. The more possible solutions mankind has available, the more possible answers he has, the more he or she feels that he or she is in a hall of 1,000 mirrors and masks, and the more unintelligible we are to ourselves, right? You know, don't sometimes, especially, just reading the prayer tonight, sometimes you just love it when someone can just kind of tell you, hey, you've got choice A and B, right? It's hard as hell. Buffets are crazy for me. I've got my own food issues, but coming to a buffet like this is like, oh man, I want it all. Like, what to pick? Do I need the ravioli? I don't even know what that is, ravioli. Is it a cannoli? I don't know what that is. It came here mainly from the and now our young people, and we'll talk about this, or maybe not, but I'll just say this. In terms of their identity, which we know pre-adolescents and adolescents are struggling with, because that's hardwired into the developmental process. Most adolescents are struggling and wrestling, right, with their identity, and they're trying to answer that question, who am I? One of our challenges is to get them to add on to that question, whose am I? Amen? Amen, right? And so as they're answering that question, their identity, well, when in the 1970s, when I was growing up, we had X number of options to pick from. And I grew up in a small Cajun town. We didn't have to take a Piro or a canoe to school, but it was close to that. There were people who did, in my wife's hometown, but nonetheless, seriously. But there were just a few options. There were two options when we graduated from high school, blue collar and white collar. You want white collar, go to college. You don't, go offshore and work in the oil field, right? Young people, who are they? Well, you can either be a man or a woman. Well, that was pretty much assumed for like 20 years. And now young people are looking out at the world. Now they've got a whole bunch of different options to pick from. And so if adolescence really is like a dressing room of the department store, right? Where you go in and try on different outfits, right, in terms of your identity. Well now, that department store is on steroids, right? It's exponentially bigger than when most of us were growing up and when we were in school. And so how many of you guys ever went to a Kmart? Show your age, raise your hands. Own it. All right. Went to a Kmart. Remember the blue light special? Oh boy. Hello! I love the popcorn. Loved it. They put the popcorn machine to use the smell factor, the blue light, the siren, and me and my mom went running. We were trailer trash, so my mom was like shoving popcorn in her purse like to take home. A foil-lined purse at that, right? And then they had all this stuff that was on a big sale. Well, now the blue light special is right near LGBTQ+. And for young people, it's like a lot of young people are going to that and they're looking to see, well, let me try this on. And for many of them, that's what it is. It is faith, and they are trying it on. For some, it's not. We don't precisely and definitively know why. Please be distrustful of folks who give these nice, pat, generalized, definitive answers when it comes to science, and especially in the social sciences. I would encourage you to be distrustful. One, it's easy. It feels good for the ego of the speaker to do that, but finally, there are very, very few definitives. In theology, maybe, but in the social sciences, there really aren't. And so tonight, because, my wife said it's got to be hard for you to speak now. It really does. It's got to be hard for you to be a speaker now that you've been counseling, because I can put a face, everything that I tell you definitively, I can put a face and a family on an exception to that, right? I remember when I was certain that birth control was black and white, and contraception was black and white, until I had a couple come in, and the wife would go into anaphylactic shock at the mere contact with her husband's sperm. I remember my certainty went out of the window. Not my understanding, not my belief in the contraception, the theology behind it, and the reasoning behind it, but when you're in the trenches, you're in the grave, right? You're in the grave, you're in the real world with young people. And I, like you, spend every day in the trenches with hurting young people. So our theological anthropology, we are created in the image and likeness of God. Amen. Sigmund Kidd, the wonderful philosopher theologian, said, everybody in her book, Secret Life of Bees, everyone needs a God who looks like them. We all do. We all do. You go across the world and you'll see different various images of Jesus, because we need a God who looks like us in order to be able to connect with them. Many of the reasons young people go to you, because you in some way, maybe not physically, but emotionally, maybe there's an energy, your spirit, your soul, in some way looks like them, and they are drawn to you and attracted to you. We come from God, we exist to know, love, and serve God, and we are destined for eternity with God. And the Catechism, one of the most quoted lines, right? The desire for God is inscribed on the human heart. It's not our job to put that desire there. It's already there, right? Inscribed. If we were going to use Greek to outline that sentence, we would use the verb charakteo, right? Character, right? To etch it in, like etching it in stone. Our job isn't to put God there. Our job is to wipe away the obstacles that prevent them from being able to touch the God who is already inside of them. Amen? Is that fair? Is that fair? Awesome. Jesus is the, capital T, revelation of God and the model of true humanity. He is the image of the invisible God, as Paul said in Hebrews. One of the most important things that will come out of my mouth tonight, that if we can't agree on this, you're going to be miserable for the next 45 minutes. Damn, is it going to be 45 more minutes? Seriously? I'll try to make it in 30, really. Because I want to open it up for Q&A. Mother Teresa said this many times. It's actually on the walls of some of her homes in Calcutta. It is not good enough for us to be right. God calls us to be effective. Right? So I'll give you a gift. You're right. Pat yourself on the back and take that home. I'm right. Right? There's a difference between being right and having another person admit to you that you're right. One of them is metaphysics. It's a reality thing. The second, right, is an ego move. The second one is all an ego move, right? I can be right all day long, but when I need my wife to admit that I was right about something, which I do, often, she never does it, right? That is an ego move. That is all about me, and it is not about them. So often we minister in the name of Jesus, and we're really ministering in the name of our own ego. And so this issue especially requires us to be very much in touch with our brokenness and very much in touch with the fact that we have got an imperial ego that wants to rule the show. I would assert that mine's bigger than anyone else's in the room. And if it weren't for my wife constantly popping it when I get off the plane and get home, I wouldn't even be able to get in the door. How can we claim to see Christ in bread if we cannot see him in other people, Mother Teresa? Christ revealed John Paul II, right? It really is John Paul II, because he wrote this, Gaudium et Spes, the Pastoral Constitution. But probably one of the most quoted lines from Vatican II, Christ reveals man to himself and makes his true calling near, which is why we look to God. And to be human is good, right? It's good. To be human is to be in relationship and in community. That's important for some of the pastoral considerations that we're going to talk about in a little while. These things guide my practice, right? I have a secular license. I'm an LPC in the state of Louisiana, right? But it's these, we disclaim, folks, that we're a Catholic counseling center, and it's this anthropology that guides what we do. This one's most important tonight. You do not have your body. Your body has you. That's important. We don't have our bodies. Our bodies have us. Now, if you tend to be, and I'm not, so I'm going to poke a little fun here, so pardon me. If you tend to be in the more cerebral crowd, your body is really just a vehicle to get your brain from one place to another. For me, at times, it's just a place for me to get my mouth from one place to another, right? But this thing that is called the temple of the Holy Spirit is holy, right? And the Holy Father has reaffirmed this. As progressive as he is in pastoral consideration for young people in the LGBTQ+ spectrum, right? He continues to reaffirm that we're in dangerous territory when we try to separate, right, the soul and the body, right? We separate them to be able to name two different realities, two different entities, right? But they are the same, and they are intimately connected by virtue of the order of creation, right? Sex belongs to the order of creation, and it is integral to the image of God. Sex is something we are, not just something that we do. You know, in terms of, we are sexed, male and female, God created us, but we are not sexed from God. Sex actually comes from the Latin word separare, which means to cut off, or right, to split, right? We are not sexed from God. God is intimately a part of who we are. But sex isn't just an act, it's who we are, and it's spiritual and holy. So that's kind of the underlying, theological premise that I'm going to work from tonight. And so if we get into, we're not going to get into a debate, but in the question and answers, I'm going to come back to that. Does that make sense? I'll refer back to that. So, all right, LGBTQ, Seriously? What's the plus, right? What are all those letters? So, lesbian, women who are so we lump all these things together, but it's really not fair because we can just pull the T right out of there because it's its own thing, right? So lesbian, gay, bisexual, queer, and even at times questioning, right? LGBTQ, right, are really all about sexual orientation. Gay can be applied to women and men who have a same-sex attraction, lesbian, women who have a same-sex attraction, bisexual, attracted to both sexes, queer and questioning. It just depends on where you are if they prefer the term queer. Questioning just kind of means I really don't know where I am on that, but I'm looking and I'm exploring. Okay, transgender, we'll talk about that in a second. Transgender is my identity, right? And in psychology, we describe that as gender dysphoria. And I'll talk more about that because I really think that's the biggest sticky wicket in the room. Is how do we minister to young people, this growing, increasing number of young people who don't identify with their physical sex, their biological sex. They feel an emotional and psychological identification with a different gender. So the plus is for intersex or asexual. It's a very inclusive. Intersex meaning people who are born with ambiguous genitalia, hormones, and reproductive organs. Cisgender basically is gender identity. For those of you who are a man and you identify with being a man, you are cisgender. Woman, cisgender, right? Intersex, right? We have several variations. Gender dysphoria. Drinking out of a fire hydrant yet? Okay, all right. I know a lot of you are very familiar, but I know some of you are really here to learn. Gender dysphoria is the experience of having one's emotional, psychological identity not correspond with one's biological sex. And so we've got young people who are identifying all over that continuum, and our opportunity, not obligation, although it is, our opportunity to minister to these young people, and when applicable, bring healing into the lives of these young people, emotionally, spiritually, psychologically, is a real opportunity. And you have unique opportunities to do that as youth workers and youth ministers, as directors, as teachers, as parents. So what are our pastoral goals? To validate and support them. Let me repeat that. To validate and support them. Notice it does not say there, to validate and support them. I think that it's very important, and I think it's very easy to validate the individual without necessarily validating their behavior. And we'll talk about, I'll give you some language for that may, and again, I realize that I know some of you in here are seasoned pros and you could be up here adding to my presentation. So maybe some of what I'll just talk about tonight is affirming for what you already know. Help them hold the tension of which young people are not good at today. I would say most Americans are not good at holding the tension. And the tension that we're asking young people to do, and this is where I'm going to go bury my feet in the psychological sand. Not my head, but I'm going to cement my feet in the ground. I'm going to ask every young person that comes in under the age of 25 until that prefrontal cortex is fully developed, right? A 27-year-old coming in my office telling me they have a same-sex attraction is very different from the 17 and very different from the 14-year-old, right? And we're talking about ministering to the 14, to the 17, to the 19, to the 20-year-old. And psychologically, and this is where I have real concern for my profession. I get emails every day from therapists on where in the country can I send this teenager to go and transition, have a sexual reassignment surgery. And I want to go to their office, and you know, like that person who is a little too chipper in the morning, and they're like, hey! And you want to punch him in the trachea? That's what I want to do. I just want to punch him in the trachea, right? So that, and maybe break their fingers, right? I understand that those young people need compassion and acceptance, but I want them to hold the tension because there is a lot of gray matter that's not there yet. I have worked with too many young people who were confident for years that they were transgender and for years that they had a same-sex attraction, only for them to get to their junior year and go, you know what? I guess, Mr. Roy, I guess it's like a shoe. You know, that fit for a while, but it doesn't fit anymore. Well, thank God your parents didn't just spend $175,000 and mortgage their home to go get your genitalia reassigned. Thank God we didn't start injecting hormones, which we have no idea what the hell they're going to do to your body and to your system at 14 years old. Much less 6 and 7 and 8, right? So that's some of the science, right? Help them hold the tension. Because my feelings are going this way, Mr. Roy, and I felt like this, and I've had these thoughts for a long time, Mr. Roy, right? And yet, I'm 14. That creates a tension. And I'm just asking them, help me to help you. I feel like Jerry Maguire. Help me help you. Help me help you to hold this tension and I'll tell them that. I'll tell them some of the statistics that I'm going to show you tonight. And several studies, 80 or more % of young people who were firmly convinced they had a same-sex attraction after they graduated from high school no longer identify with a same-sex attraction. Right? Now, you might be thinking, you might misperceive me for someone who's not very progressive, and you would be wrong. I'm very progressive, right? But I've read the science. And I know what the research says. And so when we're talking about adolescence, I think that there's a lot of value in helping them hold attention. But kids don't want to hold the attention to me. They don't want to hold the tension in their identity. They want a quick fix. They don't want to feel the anxiety. They don't want to ride the sad mood out. They want it fixed. They want it instantly. And I get it, because I'm like that too. Hold their current identity gently. And I'm going to show you how I do this and how I do it with integrity, and then you can modify it and how you do it in your various roles. I want to reinforce for them when I'm reflecting back to them what I'm hearing them saying, that what they're going through right now is specific and current. That's going to be very important. We'll come back to that. So let's talk about some of the data. Let's talk about some of the science, which is very hard to come by. Much of the data that I'm going to present to you comes from a meta-study done by the New Atlantis, right, which surveyed a lot of the literature. I reached out to 3 different universities, each of which was at a different point on the theological continuum. One very conservative, one middle of the road, and one tended to be very progressive. All 3 of their psychology departments and theology departments pointed me back to the New Atlantis. This meta-study, and so I'm going to share with you the research that we have there, as well as the youth risk behavior study that's administered in a lot of public schools. I don't know that we do it in a lot of Catholic schools. That's where the data is coming from. For those of you who are data nerds like me, you want the source, don't believe me, don't trust me, I get it. Get the PowerPoint, give me your email, and it's all cited at the end. LGBTQ plus young people have an elevated risk for adverse mental health issues. That's an understatement. They have 1.5 times the risk of anxiety than hetero youth. That's a mild statistic, which means, so if 1 in 4, which we talked about last year, right? 1 in 4 young people today between the ages of 12 and 17 have an anxiety disorder, so you can do the math. Even more young people on LGBTQ have it. Twice the risk of depression, 1.5 times the risk of substance abuse, 2.5 times the risk of suicide, and 2 to 3 times more likely to experience childhood sexual abuse. More from the YRBS, 8% of teens, I think that's conservative, identify on the LGBTQ spectrum. We could have a discussion over cocktails another time, whether or not those young people actually are, are gay, will remain gay, lesbian, bisexual, transgender, but at least that many identify. I would probably say closer to 11%, depending upon. 18% report being raped. That's 3 times higher than heterosexual young people. 30% of LGBTQ youth have attempted suicide. That's 4 times higher than the normal population. 6% are involved in heroin use and 5% other IV drug use. 2.5 times, I already said that, the risk of suicide. Twice as likely to be bullied. I believe that is a conservative statistic. I would argue that it's probably 3 to 5 times more likely to be bullied, depending upon the area, right? So the New Atlantis. Here's what we know. The research cannot, based on what we know from science, the research cannot substantiate the born that way hypothesis, right? We can neither, and this is what it doesn't say, and I send an email to the editor, neither though can we substantiate that it's not, right, that it's an environmental, right? So basically we don't know, but we cannot substantiate the born that way. There is, however, evidence to support that there are genes and hormones that are associated with orientation. There is good evidence to support that. Researchers cannot substantiate. So I'm quoting from the New Atlantis, but let me put it in layman's language. There are minor brain differences in PET scans and advanced PET scans that we've done on the differences between non-hetero youth and heterosexual young people, and not just young people, but adults as well. But they cannot substantiate that those minor brain structure differences contribute to a biological or nature-driven same-sex attraction. Is that making sense? Any questions on that before we get any more deep into the data? Okay. 80% of adolescents in one study have actually read 2 others, but I don't have those cited here, report same-sex attraction. They no longer experience that as adults. Could you make an argument and say, well, maybe they just went back in the closet because it was too hard? You could absolutely make that argument, and you and I could have a great conversation about that. But this is the data. So gender identity from the New Atlantis. I think 0.06 is probably on the edge of, a lot of the folks who I speak with, this is completely anecdotal, believe that real gender dysphoria, that authentic gender dysphoria, which is really a sticky wicket, psychologically, emotionally, and spiritually, is probably closer to the lower end of that, 0.03% of the population. A very small percentage. How many people identify? It's probably closer to 3%, to be perfectly honest. Adults who have a sexual reassignment surgery are at a much higher risk of poor mental health outcomes. Read this. This statistic that I've corroborated, not just in the New Atlantis, but I've read the research that it was based on, right? Sexually reassigned adults are 5 times more likely to attempt suicide. That statistic alone governs my pastoral approach to working with young people, which is why I'm not willing to tell a teenager, it's okay to do whatever you want. Because I believe we got their lives in our hands. I believe that there's consequences, especially, this isn't just a presentation on transgender. I know that, that is important. It's very important. These young people are 19 times more likely to die by suicide. 19 times more likely to die by suicide. Mind blowing. Again, weak correlations, but there are some. There are weak correlations between brain structure and cross-gender identification. Lifetime suicide rate for transgender identifying individuals is 41% compared to 5% in the overall population. When suicide is the second leading cause of death for young people between the ages of 12 and 25, that is a very important statistic. Small minority of children who identify as cross-gender continue into adolescence or adulthood. So when we're getting the 6-year-old sexually reassigned surgery or hormones, we are ignoring the data. You know, we have one governing ethic. We've got a lot of ethics, right? But our governing ethic, I'm sure you can guess what it is. Do no harm. It just blows my mind that we would do that, that the medical community isn't doing that. For young people, all right? Little scientific evidence supporting the therapeutic value of biological interventions, meaning delayed puberty and modifying the secondary sex characteristics for young people. All right, so how do we help these young people? Thank God you finally got to that, because that's why we're here, you big nerd. Okay, one, we can pray with these young people who are really suffering and they're really grieving, because they are at times experiencing, many of them start out experiencing genuine confusion. They really are genuinely confused. And patronizing and condescending responses to them, oh, well, you just grow up. Let's just let your brain germs grow and you're going to be okay, right? Aren't helpful and they only drive them further away. We can help parents understand what they're going through. We can provide a safe place for parents and the teens to gather to process feelings, because for parents, and we'll talk about that more specifically in a little while, because very often, not always, but a lot of parents, especially a lot of die-hard Catholic parents, experience shock, confusion, sadness, and powerlessness. It's a grieving process for many parents, because especially for, if they, they might have these dreams of being grandparents, and their son or daughter comes home and tells them that they have a same-sex attraction, or that they're gay or lesbian, and and immediately it's like, oh my gosh, I'm not going to be a grandparent. We can stay on the roller coaster of them. You guys are pros at that. You do that already. Growth, change, intentional. Provide resources and referrals to teens and parents. In case I forget to say it later, I will just be very blunt with you right now. It is my opinion. Now, again, you can take that, perforate it, put it on a roll, and do what you will with it, right? But it is my opinion that young people who present with gender dysphoria, I would strongly encourage you to go one up, as my good friend Ella Molesky, Archdiocese of New York says, go one up. Check with your supervisor. But in addition, I would say that's a referral. Those young people, I want you to continue to walk with that young person, right? I want you to continue to walk with that young person, but they are going to need more consistent and more trained assistance in walking and going through that journey in time than any youth worker I know is going to be able to offer. It's a real big, and it's real sticky. Like, I specialize in teens, and I specialize in Catholic, and so folks fly in their teens who are struggling with these issues. They come in, and I work, and I'm telling you, it's sticky, it's thorny, and there's a lot of landmines in walking with these young people. Again, remember tonight, we're talking about young people, right? We're talking about kids who are in flux. We know that biologically they're changing. Why would we want to encourage them to land definitively anywhere until this is finished growing, which we know is connected to their soul, right? I'm a bleeding heart liberal, and I know some of you are like, I can't believe it. I can't believe it. But the science is just evident. It's just so evident to me. We can encourage them to have a wider friend network of support. The teens who have a really good relationship with, and I know we're putting this out there on YouTube, they'll know that they watch it. I'm pumping back now, okay? So where are your straight friends? Well, I don't have any straight friends. Well, why not? And they can make a good argument. Well, because they are the ones who bully me and pick on me. Do you want straight friends? No, not really. Well, why are you upset with them? Because they don't want you as a friend. Oh. Because could hear him pee on cotton after that, right? Yeah, and I get it, but we can encourage them, hetero friends who are safe. I think it's good for them to have a healthy, diversified support network. I think it's good for them to hear an adult go, hey, is there no straight friends? Because I think it's good. You know, I've got gay friends. You know, I tell them, I've got gay friends. You should have straight friends. You know, I mean, I don't just hang out with straight people because I don't like, but I mean, I just think it's good for you. Not because of the research that says you're going to become like the 5 people you spend the most time with. I do not believe in reparative therapy. I do not. It is unethical for us to practice reparative therapy. I do believe, though, in investigation. I do believe that if there's something there, then in a genuine inquiry in counseling, right, that can come up and we can expose that to God's healing grace if that's what it is. But I've worked with young people who I just knew. I've worked with for 10 years, and I knew and still know that you know, I don't know what brought it about. They had a same-sex attraction, and that wasn't a phase for them, and that is real. So how do we accompany, as Pope Francis encourages, how do we accompany these young people? Less is more. Listen, encourage, share, and support. Listening, this is the big one. Attend to the person, right? I love the ladies who were in the back. I thought it was just 2 ladies, but now I see a gentleman sitting there with a yellow tie on. I'm sorry, no offense, sir. With the disability, ministering to folks with disabilities and handicaps. I took pictures of their signs because focus on the person, right? I think that isn't that what it says right at the top left? Yeah. Focus. Attend to the person, right? Reflect back to them what you hear and validate their feeling and experience. And I'm going to give you language, and you're going to get the PowerPoint to go home. Because I don't know about for you, language really helps me through this. And so what do I say? Okay. So rarely, now I'm going to talk out of the other side of my mouth, rarely what we say to people, but it's how we are with them and who we are that influences them the most, honestly. And it takes great courage to be really present to another person's experience when we unconsciously want to avoid it and fix it, but we really can't do neither. That's the essence of compassion. That I am willing to suffer with you. I don't experience your suffering, but I experience the suffering of my ego that wants to make this go away, that wants to fix it, that wants to clean this up, that wants it to not be messy, but I can't do that, and I'm still going to stay in with you. And especially if you have OCD like me, staying in the mess is a nightmare. So it's really my cross. I think it's my purgatory. Thank you, Jesus. I'll go to heaven. Ministry of presence. How do you like that, Northeasterners, right? I'm a gentle Southerner, like putting things forward tentatively. Brought this out just for you. Show up, shut up, and don't change the subject. Boom! Last time I was up here, folks were like, we're from Jersey. You can be more direct and blunt. It's like, I don't know how to do that. Like, we know how to very kindly tell people to kiss our derrieres down south. And have them like it. So we listen, oftentimes we'll listen to fix when God really calls us to listen to understand and to heal. And listening can do that. We know that in working with people who experience trauma. Some folks define trauma as the lack of an empathic witness, meaning someone went through an event, but there was no one there who understood what they were going through. No one there who were watching them go through it, who understood what they were going through. At minimum, our ministry of presence, we can be an empathic witness. Wow. I can't even begin to imagine how difficult it is for you to experience, to be in love with your faith and yet be attracted to people of the same sex. I can't imagine how difficult that is for you and what it's like for you. Why won't talking work? Because of human resistance. That's why talking doesn't work. Right? I can tell I'm putting some of you to sleep. I mean, I see 3 of you sleeping right now. I get it. This is why talking doesn't work. Right? But I'm up here and getting paid to do it, so here we go. Logic is not enough. Logic is not enough. If logic were enough to produce change, no one would smoke, no one would drink and drive, no one would text and drive, no one would overeat, everyone would go to the gym, and we'd all eat fruits and vegetables. Right? Logic is not enough to produce change. The problem for us Catholics is that our church has spent millennia specializing in logic. We're the best at it. No one in the world is better at logic than the Catholic Church. We've got books and books and books, and when we've got another problem, I'll write another book. Let's throw some more logic at it. What the hell? Nothing's happening. It's because it's not, you can't answer an emotional question with logic. You can't. It's going to go dumb. All right, for those of you who have taught, all right, been catechist, right? Like me. You know, well, why, the young man who raised, why the hell can the church say that my parents were never married because they got an annulment? Well, I'll have to bring out the catechism. Blah. You know, man, makes perfect sense. I get it. But I still don't buy it. Boom! It's an emotional question. Right? So emotional resistance, what's underneath the surface? There's a lot of fear in these young people. Some of them have experienced loss and disappointment. Disenchantment with God, the church, and others because they see themselves as not being able to fit in. Disenchantment with themselves. I've worked with a lot of young people who identify as LGBTQ who really were very honest. I don't want to be this way, Mr. Roy. This isn't, I don't, why would I not want to not fit in? You know, for many of them. I've had others say different, but some say that. Trauma, some of them have experienced trauma. Genuine confusion for many, not all. And I'm not trying to be patronizing, right? I'm certainly not being patronizing. Perceptions, their perceptions of the church, their perceptions of themselves, of the world. Groupthink, because they tend to, you know, come together, obviously for support, but they also tend to just reaffirm one another and what they think, whether they have really thought that through or not. Co-occurring mental health issues, very often they're seeking answers and support online. So when they can't get it from us, and oftentimes before they even try to get it from us, they're going online and they're getting some, let's just put it mildly, unhelpful resources there. Some are helpful. So empathic evangelization, what does this mean? How do we evangelize young people? How do we minister to them with empathy? It means we take the initiative. We don't wait for them to come to us. We take the initiative and go to them. Right? We say 50% less than we want to. This is good parenting advice. And some of you are like, you should take your own damn advice. Right? I'm getting to the end, promise. Ask genuinely curious questions, not interrogative. We don't ask leading questions. We listen first. We reflect back what we hear. We ask if they feel heard, and we follow up. Boom. If you're going to write something down, and some of you have run out of paper, I understand. If you're going to write something down, this would be the one thing that I would want for you to write down. This is both reflecting, and both reflects, it's a tool for reflecting back what we hear from the young people, as well as a very passive teaching method of reflecting. Right? It's called the double for those of you who are counselors and LPCs in the audience, right? Where it's a complex double, actually. Mr. Roy, God, I've just been thinking, I've just kind of, I'm 17 now, and since I was like 11, I've really felt very often it's around puberty. Since I was 11, sometimes they'll go back to 6 because they really want to drive it home and make evidence for their case, and that's fine too. Sometimes it really has been since they were 6. I just have felt, I just never really, felt like a guy. I just always, wished that I was a girl. And, I really don't know what that means. Okay, cool. Awesome. I'm so glad that you were talking to me about this. Amen? Amen. Is that always our response? I know a lot of times our response is we can't respond because we're having a panic attack because the adrenaline from fight club, oh crap, what do I do? I don't know how to respond to this, right? But when they bring it in, well now, we've been doing this as long as I have, as long as some of you have, it's like, awesome, I'm so glad you're talking to me because you're going to get some good help. You couldn't be in better hands than when talking to me, and I want you to be able to say that about yourself. That young person couldn't be in better hands. Whether you continue to walk with them directly and intensely or refer them, which very often you might have to do that, they couldn't be in better hands than coming to you. And so I'm like, awesome, I'm just so glad you're here. Because when they put that out there, when they come out to you or share that with you, right, is a huge communication of trust. It's a huge risk. It's a huge vulnerability. And they are waiting. Everything hinges on your response when they put that out there, right? They're waiting to know if it's going to go, if you're going to go, ugh, right? Which will certainly send them packing. But that's not the worst. Or they're waiting for you to go, I'm so glad you're here. Let's talk about it. That's the best response. The worst response is this. Oh, okay. So are you thinking about coming to youth group? You know that friend who doesn't know how to listen, and when you put something out there and it just goes plop, right? Better for it to be shoved back in your face than to just go plop, right? Nobody likes that, right? Again, it's the trachea punch. So for you right now, is it kind of like, yeah, I'm 17 and I just never really kind of felt at home in my body, and I feel like I should feel like a boy, but I don't really feel like a boy. Is it kind of like that? And the teen will either go, yeah, exactly, probably not that one that I just did. They might go, yeah, which means there's more, right? Or most of the time they're not going to go no, because they're going to be nice to us and they're going to tell us what we want to hear, right? So we've got to know that and be careful. But this is important, because I'm doing 3 things here. So for you, not for everybody, for you. And this is important for you. Like, you don't feel like that when you're doing this, you don't feel like you're validating the whole world. No, you're validating this person, right? Current, right now. That is important. I say this at least 25 times a day. Okay, so for you right now, it's kind of like, blah, 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 and you find your own language for it, but I don't want them to hear it. So for you right now, because very often clients will tell me, not only do they hear my voice in their head when they're about to cut, they hear your voice in their head too. And I don't know if they've ever told you that, but I want you to hear it from me, because they tell me about you. Why? Because I ask. I want to know. Tell me about you, Spencer. What do they do that's good? Because they'll be honest with me. They don't want you to not like it if they tell you the truth, right? But they hear your voice and it's, okay, so for you right now, this could be, I'm not defining it as, but I'm opening up the opportunity, this could be temporary. Is it kind of like, I'm putting it forth tentatively, so for you right now, it's like, hey, I'm transgender. Oh, no, I didn't say that, Mr. Roy, I don't know. So if I put it forth tentatively, does that make sense? All right, so just stay with this. This is real important. If you can do that, you can validate and affirm people even when they're in behaviors that you might vehemently disagree with. You can do this with integrity. Okay, so for you right now, is it kind of like that? Yeah. And then you can say, wow, it makes perfect sense to me, knowing what I know, and that if I were in your shoes, having gone through what you're going through, it makes perfect sense to me, considering what you think, what your beliefs are, what your experiences have been, that you would see this as really the only alternative. That makes perfect sense to me that you would see that. Let's continue to talk about it. That's 90% of the ball game, folks. Those 2 things. People at that point, my clients know, all of them, and they want to come back. They don't have to come back. We don't take insurance. Their parents would happily not pay my hourly rate if their kid didn't want to come see me, knowing that my bias is for them to hold attention. They know that Mr. Roy's not going to sit there and go, you know what, it's been long enough, you're gay. They know that those words are never going to come out of my mouth, right? They know. Oh, it's okay. Let's start. Can we get on Google right now and start looking up some hormone therapy? Let's do that right now. I think we should, right? No. Right? But when they're validated, when they feel safe, see, the big cultural belief is wrong. It's not that young people don't want us to disagree, right? They just want to know that they're loved and that they're safe. We can disagree. Once they know that, we can disagree all day long, right? Here's just some other questions. I'm going to wrap it up because I want to get to questions. It seems like there's been a lot of change in your life. What's that been like for you? Very often when young people are in the transition, where they're just coming out, just say, oh, it just seems like there's a lot of change going on right now. What's that like for you? Based on what we know, attraction and identity can change during our lives, right? Often drastically during adolescence. The whole nature of attraction, right? What does it mean to be, even for kids who have the orientation, what does it mean to be attracted to someone? I'm straight. I've really always been straight. But when I was in seminary, I had a good friend of mine who was a really good-looking guy. Very nice, symmetrical features, hair, all the works. And he was like, I'm attracted to you. And I was like, oh, that felt good. I graduated from high school, I was morbidly obese, and no one would even talk to me, much less be attracted to me. And like, I mean, and he was like, I'm attracted to you. And I remember for 2 weeks visiting with my spiritual director, my counselor. Oh, I'm like, hey, I'm gay because I'm attracted to him. And I learned that attraction is very nuanced. What's attracted? There's a soul attraction, right? There's a soul attraction. There's an emotional attraction. And sometimes when that happens, a lot of young people think, well, there must be a physical attraction as well. Believe it or not, that happens. That's not always the case, but sometimes it is. Based on the limited amount I know about our world, what it's like to be a teen today, read this over and over. Based on the limited amount that I know about your world and what it's like to be a teen today, and how many stressors, how much worry you guys have about the future, it makes perfect sense to me that for you right now, it's really important to lock down this part of your identity. It's really important for you to be able to go out to the halls of school and go, I'm gay. It's really important for you to put the rainbow on your back, sack, whatever the hell I'm trying to say. You know what I mean, right? It's really important for you to say, I'm transgender. It's really important for you because with all this uncertainty, you need to drive a stake in the sand. That makes perfect sense to me. That makes perfect sense to me. And look, what you've already kind of put out there, we're not going to be able, it's like squeezing toothpaste out of the tube. We're not going to be able to get it back in. But let's see if we can brush our teeth with the toothpaste. Encourage them. Faith in the person, express hope and possibilities, perseverance in distress, share feelings of care and support, commit to walking with them. Let me move, I want to skip. I can tell y'all are ready to get the heck out of here. We started a little late, so I just got couple more slides. Uh-oh, of course it's good. Come on. Of course it's not working. Okay, hang on. Oh, I can't even do that. Oh, well. All right, well, I guess that's the end. Okay, there it is. It's just something I'm kind of, you're like, thank God. All right. Be a safe place for them to be able to express what they're going through. We only share what you absolutely know and we share facts with parents. Speculation does not help you, nor does it help the parent. Share facts with parents. If in doubt on how to handle this, go one up, right? Go one up. I love how this thing, like, check with your supervisors. Always have a referral base to be able to refer parents and go from there. But questions, I want to take some questions, and I'll hang out too. But let's take at least 2 or 3 questions.